Welcome back. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa last night further relaxed the COVID-19 lockdowns to level 2, allowing more operating times for business. But what does this mean for business overall? Bonang Mohale, who is the President of Business Unity South Africa, joins us live. Bonang, thanks so much for your time and welcome back. Short retirement, hey?
Thank you so much, Mechomutso, and thank you for having me.
How about you went to retire, now you're calling me Mechomutso. What kind, Bonang?
Untshwarele. Ke a leboha Mefifi. Kona ke tsoang.
Oh, I see that you haven't lost your humor, and it's really fantastic. So, Mara, just let us know briefly what you think of level 2. Does it really move the dial for business at this stage?
Look, anything helps. It's better than enhanced alert level number 3. But I think we need to be intellectually honest and say the way the economy is in so much trouble, would have wished that we are probably at alert level number 1 for a number of reasons. Number 1, the Stats SA figures tell us that the GDP has grown by 1.2%. Positive growth, so we take it. But if you consider that the population is growing at 1.6%, it actually means that we are going backwards. But even if you were to do very crude arithmetic, and you say, suppose the interest rate is at 6%, CPI is at 3%, it means GDP growth must be at 3% for you just to stand still. So we're not even at that. And to look at the elements that are contributing to this growth, that's where I think the spot of bother is. 1, it is a jobless growth, because we have lost 3.2 million jobs, we have created 800,000 net, with 2.2 million less than when we got into COVID. As if that's not enough, even the commodities super cycle that we should be enjoying, it looks like we're not making hay whilst the sun shines, and we missed it, remember, when China was demanding coal, our value chain could not be able to get the coal to China as quickly as we wanted it to go. But the point that really worries me, Mefifi, is that we're not growing in the sectors that will create outsized and oversized job impact. We're growing in the sector that broadly we will call financial services, but it's much broader than that. And in financial services, not in manufacturing, not in agriculture, not in tourism and hospitality, not even in ICT, where we'll need the skills for tomorrow. 2 last points from my side. Remember that the 2 weeks in July, rampant looting are not in these figures. But also the Transnet cyber attack are not in these figures. So if anything, they are likely to wipe off all the gains that we have currently enjoyed. So we like the fact that it's 2 consecutive quarters of positive GDP growth, which means we're out of the recession. But other than that, I think we need to tighten our belts, gird our loins in anticipation that is going to get more difficult before it gets better. Mefifi?
In the President's defense, perhaps, the reason why we weren't, or the lockdown wasn't removed in its entirety was the fact that we don't have enough of our population currently vaccinated. And it seems like it is a government's strategy to perhaps introduce something like a vaccine passport to perhaps try and eliminate the vaccine hesitancy currently holding us back from herd immunity. What do you make of that? And do you think that will be effective?
Look, it's a probable explanation. But remember, the pandemic, we have always emphasized 2, not 3 things. So 1 is we want to save lives. So we'll lock down, we'll get the hospitals ready, we'll get oxygen, masks, etc. Secondly, we said we are going to preserve livelihoods because we knew that we'll probably kill 10 times more people through losing their jobs out of hunger and starvation than those that are actually killed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The point we should have emphasized is that how do we then break the chain, the link between the coronavirus cases and deaths? And the only way you can do that is through vaccinations. Because vaccinations ensure that, first of all, you reduce your chance of contracting the pandemic. If you do, it's unlikely to be so severe that it leads to hospitalization where you might need oxygen. But even if you do get it, at least you are sure that you are not going to die. So when the president set us a herd immunity target in January of 67%, that's 40 million people. We should have been vaccinating at a rate of 100,000 a day, every day. Had we done that in January, it would have taken us 400 days or 13.3 months, which means we were actually planning to finish only next year, 2022. So the reason why a lot of people are not vaccinated, it wasn't because of the availability of vaccines. I mean, today we've got capacity to vaccinate 400,000 people a day. The reason why we are not doing it is because government wants to put their arms around it in an elective year of local municipality. I suppose they thought, let's take all the credit. They could have given the 400,000 for the mine workers to Roger Baxter at the Minerals Council. They could have given Adrian Gore his 2 million for all the Discovery members. They could have given Imperial. They could have given the Bidvest Group Limited for their 135,000 employees. They would have, each, these companies, probably have done it in 90 days. Here's the one thing that we just fail to appreciate. You see, vaccine rollout was always going to be a race, because the country that can say we have now defeated the coronavirus pandemic and therefore have reached herd immunity, which means at least 80% of our population have developed antibodies to this pandemic, will then be able to reap the pent-up global tourism demands. To show how behind we are, when you compare ourselves with BRIC counterparts and you look only on the 27th of January and you look at doses administered, Brazil was already on 579,000. Russia was already on 800,000. India, 2 million. China on 15 million. South Africa, 0. So today we should be running at 350 to 400,000 inoculations a day, every day. But we're still not routinely open on Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah. Only the private sector does that. So I think we need to demonstrate that we want to get this herd immunity. We want it so bad that our life depends on it. Mefifi?
Yeah. Gerrit, we can look at the past and see the mistakes that we made and hopefully learn from it for the future. So now your running mate, your new running mate at BUSA, Mr. Adrian Gore himself, is saying that as business, or as his company Discovery, as from January, it will be compulsory for Discovery workers to get vaccinated. What's your stance on making vaccines mandatory, and do you think that this is how companies can help government catch up?
You see, as an employer, you have a constitutional duty to provide a safe working environment for others. So in the public interest, you cannot afford to have one employee who decides, for whatever reason, that I'm not going to get vaccinated, therefore putting my life at danger. But it's their democratic right to do so. But that person has no right to put the lives of the 20 people in that cubicle where they work together. As an employer, you say, I want to be able to say, everybody that comes in every morning, every day, their temperature is taken, they fill in a questionnaire that says they've not been exposed, they are in. Therefore, everybody that is in this building for today is free of the pandemic. How do you do that when people are going to come up with their own personal beliefs, when your job as an employer is in the public interest to make sure that you provide a healthy working environment? By the way, that's what companies do, whether you're looking at Occupational Health and Safety Act or in petrochemicals, health, safety, security, and environment. We say these are the 12 life-saving rules. If you choose not to comply with these 12 life-saving rules, you choose not to work here. That is perfectly understandable indeed.
And is that the view, the consensus view of all BUSA members?
I think we'll be encouraging our people to say, if we want economic activity to take a step change, if we love our employees, if we put our employees first, therefore it behooves us as companies to do no harm. Secondly, to make sure that the world is a better place. The world is only a better place once all of us can look back and say we have indeed successfully defeated this coronavirus. There are very few options that are available to us.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the economy, you mentioned jobless growth. You mentioned a population growing above the economy itself. You even mentioned not making hay while the sun shines. I'm young enough to still have a good memory, and a memory that remembers that these are the same things that you said in 2019 before you formally retired. And therefore, I'd like to ask you how you would measure the current business climate today from when you left before the pandemic. What's changed? Has there been positive changes in your view? Has there been more that needs to be done?
Of course, there's been positive changes. There's been progress made. But human beings, we manage by exceptions. So I think I'll concentrate only on those things that we could have done better. As we stand today, we are suffering the lowest levels of confidence, trust, and hope since the Second World War. Where we are today, we hold the world record for all the wrong reasons. Number one, we now are the most unequal society in the world, having taken over from Brazil at a Gini coefficient of 0.6. And it is relative inequality that leads to social strife and indeed to insurrections. Number two, we now have the highest unemployment rate in the world at 44.4%. This is the unemployment rate that is associated with countries at war: Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. We're not at war. For 27 years, we are Mandela's people. We are free. And yet, 11.9 million people are not at work. That's 12 million people. 10 million young people are not in employment, education, or training. 6 million young people don't know their fathers. 30% only of households have both a mother and a father. In fact, youth unemployment is 74.9%. The elements that were present during the Arab Spring, precipitated by Tunisia's self-immolation, are here, imminent, and now. We are in clear and present danger. But also we hold the world's biggest record for the highest small-medium enterprises failure rate in the world. Lastly, of course, as if that's not enough, we spend 10 times more on education than most African countries, and yet our educational outcomes are the poorest and the worst in the world. Our grade 4 learners cannot read with comprehension. This is the pipeline of people that we are trying to get into the job market. And how does it manifest? Mefifi. Like I said, inequality is growing. Racism is at an all-time high. Black graduates are roaming the streets hopelessly. Public education has collapsed. Public health care continue to fail the poor and the vulnerable. Crucial infrastructure is laying barren because it has not been maintained. But lawlessness has now become an epidemic. Mefifi?
To a degree. I mean, we have seen arrests that probably we never thought that we'd see in our lifetime. Certainly, I never thought that I'd ever see a statesman in South Africa being jailed. And we have seen that along with other high public officials who have been arrested on allegations of corruption. But I want to go back to your point around the danger that you did highlight for South Africa's economy, referencing the very high levels of unemployment rates and also the fact that too many young people are out of work, and these are the ingredients that we did see in other very tense situations, the Arab Spring. We never exactly had a war, but we did have the worst episode of social unrest in our democratic order. Since then, we have had a government that has increased its security offering, as it were. And I'd like to understand from your point, following the response to the July riots, if we are out of danger or if we could potentially see another episode of what we did see in July.
No, no, no. In fact, not only is it coming, we are actively inviting it. Because if we don't address these things that are keeping us awake at night, we are going to ensure that it happens. So let's look at the devastation that we have caused. We now know that more than 350 lives have been lost. 150,000 jobs are now put at risk in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, mostly. 5,000 informal traders have been absolutely decimated. 148 schools have been destroyed. I mean, who destroys schools? 40,000 businesses are now affected because we have torched 200 shopping centers that were looted and damaged, 3,000 stores that were also looted, but 300 bank and post office that have been vandalized. And we have destroyed 1,400 ATMs and stole 120 million rands by destroying the furniture and picking just from the top, because the big safes you cannot even carry. Where we are as a nation, the economic impact just in stock lost is 1.2 billion. When you look at Massmart's result, one company, they are saying through the 2 weeks in July, we lost 1.3 billion rands worth of stock. The economic impact in KwaZulu-Natal, that's 20 billion lost to the GDP. Nationally, that's 50 billion. 90 pharmacies were not even spared this rampant looting. We even went to the blood bank and spilled the blood on the floor so that we can steal the fridges. We have banned probably 11 warehouses and 8 factories, and 2 of them are pharmaceutical warehouses for chronic medication like diabetes and high blood pressure and HIV/AIDS that the very looters are going to need the very next day. So I think when the Minister of Finance, the new Minister of Finance, Utatu Inogodongwana, says we have probably wiped off about 1 percentage point to our GDP, will only recover in 2023. As business, I think we have just taken ourselves back probably 20 years by cutting our nose in order to spite our faces.
Can I talk about the other side of the coin, in which we have seen positive developments in the electricity generation space, in the attempts to build a capable state, and just going back to the arrests of senior public officials that we have seen? To what degree do you think these developments could be growth enhancing, and have you seen them gathering any momentum so far?
So, Mefifi, you see, politics determine economics. When Eskom switches off the lights and we experience a blackout, we lose anything between 1 to 2 billion rands a day every day. Over a period of a year, we shave off another 1 percentage point. So we started these rolling blackouts in January of 2008. That is 13 years ago. If we can't even fix our own electricity supply in 13 years, how can the confidence go up? So you can see that we are really building new power stations, Medupi, Kusile, and Ingula hydroelectric power. 14 years later, we don't have the full 9.6 gigawatts that Medupi is supposed to give us. In fact, some units are coming on. The last one has come on stream, but the electricity supply is actually not quite sustainable. And a business has been asking for very few things. It says, give us regulatory certainty and policy stability. Everywhere else in the world, governments do only 2 things. One, they regulate. The other, they incentivize and get out of the way. Here we are competing with our own businesses, and we know that governments do generally a bad job in running businesses. We have 740 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies. Had we put in women and black people as MDs, presidents, CEOs in those entities, and we gave them only 5 years just to perform without political interference, today we'll be looking at 30,000 women and men with a demonstrable track record that when Kenya Airways and Ethiopian Airways is looking for the CEO or the MD, they'll be looking south at this 84-year-old award-winning South African Airways. But what have we done? We've destroyed that. We've destroyed Mengu. We've even destroyed South African Technical that was doing maintenance even for Lufthansa where you do A, B, C, and D checks. If you do an A check, you could even be paid $3 million per aircraft. We have destroyed that. All we had to do was just maintain the infrastructure that we inherited. Yes, there are some green shoots. We have been asking as business to say, you've got the best IPP program in the world. The first one was a bit expensive because we didn't know the risk. The second, the third, they were world-class. They are absolutely revered global. And then we kind of stopped because we were beholden to ideology. Now IPPs are just rolling out. And we've been saying, let the mines and the big aluminum smelters produce their own electricity because they can. And government limited that to 10 megawatts. After years of fighting, crying, going on our knees, the president has now increased it to 100 megawatts. He needs to be congratulated. But I think as a people, we need to be sure that we're not thanking the fish for swimming, because if you are a government, your job is to lead. When you do not lead, you are failing in your constitutional duty, not only failing to uphold, respect, and protect the Constitution, but to guarantee the 3 freedoms that are found in the preamble of our Constitution. The freedom of speech, of association, but most importantly, freedom from hunger. Mefifi?
Ntate Bonang, my director is telling me that we are out of time, but the chilling mood that business is currently feeling, I think you have conveyed very well. I do have shivers, and it is a problem because ultimately we need that mood to be lifted in order for growth to actually really get going in this country. We will invite you for another conversation on how we do that, but I think the points that you made around regulatory stability and policy certainty were well understood. So good to have you back. And until the next time, that was the President of Business Unity South Africa, Bonang Mohale, there, just telling it like it is, I suppose. Thanks so much for watching.